The dance that changed everything. The late afternoon sun painted the streets of Los Angeles in shades of amber and gold. On the corner of 5th and Main, where the old theater district met the newer glass buildings, a young woman named Emma stood on a worn piece of cardboard, preparing to dance. Emma was 23 years old, with dark hair pulled back in a simple bun and eyes that held both determination and quiet sadness. Her right leg, from the knee down, was a prosthetic, a basic model she had received from the county hospital 2 years ago. It was functional, nothing more. The ankle didn't bend quite right, and the foot was rigid, making every step a careful calculation. But Emma had learned to dance anyway. She wore a faded brown dress that had once belonged to her mother, its flowing skirt helping to create the illusion of grace as she moved. On the cardboard in front of her sat a small portable speaker, playing scratchy classical music from her phone, and a baseball cap turned upside down with a few dollar bills and coins inside. This was her stage now. Not the grand theaters she had once dreamed of, but this street corner, with the smell of exhaust and coffee from the cafe across the street, and the sound of footsteps hurrying past. Emma closed her eyes and began to move. She had started ballet when she was 6 years old, in a tiny studio above a laundromat in her neighborhood. Her teacher, Mrs. Chen, had seen something special in the shy little girl who practiced in worn-out shoes. For 12 years, Emma had trained, dreamed, and worked toward the goal of becoming a professional dancer. She had been accepted to a prestigious dance academy on a scholarship. Her future had seemed bright and certain. Then came the accident. A drunk driver, a rainy night, and Emma's life had changed in an instant. The doctors had tried to save her leg, but the damage was too severe. When she woke up in the hospital, her mother sitting beside her with red-rimmed eyes, Emma knew that her dream had been shattered along with the bones in her lower leg. The months that followed were dark. Physical therapy was painful, learning to walk again was humbling. And watching her acceptance to the dance academy expire, knowing she would never take that opportunity, felt like losing a part of her soul. But slowly, something stirred inside Emma. It was stubborn and quiet, but it refused to die. It was the same thing that had made her practice pirouettes until her feet bled, the same determination that had carried her through years of early mornings and late nights in the studio. If she couldn't dance in a company, she would dance anyway. She started in her tiny apartment, relearning balance, adapting movements, finding new ways to express what she felt. It was clumsy at first, sometimes painful, but gradually she found a style that worked with her prosthetic rather than against it. Her turns were different now, her jumps were modified, but there was still beauty in the movement. There was still art. Money was tight. The medical bills had consumed her mother's savings before cancer took her life 6 months ago. Emma worked part-time at a bookstore, but it wasn't enough to cover rent and expenses. So she had taken her dance to the streets, hoping that passers-by might spare a few dollars to help her survive another week. Most people walked past without looking. Some glanced with pity in their eyes, which Emma hated more than being ignored. Occasionally, someone would stop, watch for a moment, and drop a few bills in her cap. Those moments made it worthwhile, not just for the money, but because someone had seen her art, even here, even like this. On this particular afternoon, Emma was halfway through a piece from Swan Lake, her arms moving in graceful arcs, her body swaying with the music, when she noticed an older man standing at the edge of the small crowd that had gathered. He was tall and distinguished looking, perhaps in his early 70s, with silver hair and a well-tailored suit. His face bore the lines of someone who had lived fully, with deep creases around his eyes and mouth. But what struck Emma most was the way he was watching her. Not with pity, not with casual interest, but with the focused attention of someone who truly understood what he was seeing. The music ended. Emma held her final pose for a moment, breathing hard, then relaxed. The small crowd dispersed, a few people dropping money in her cap. The older man remained. He walked over slowly, and Emma braced herself for the usual comments. People often wanted to tell her she was inspiring, or brave, or that she shouldn't give up. The words were well-meaning but often felt hollow. That was remarkable, the man said. His voice was deep and warm, with a slight accent Emma couldn't quite place. Your adaptation of the adagio showed real understanding of the choreography. And your port de bras, your arm movements, were exquisite. Emma blinked in surprise. This man spoke the language of ballet. He knew what he was talking about. Thank you, she said softly. I'm Robert, he said, extending his hand. Robert Chen. I used to be a choreographer, many years ago. Chen. Emma repeated, shaking his hand. I had a ballet teacher named Mrs. Chen. His eyes crinkled with a smile. Margaret Chen is my sister. She told me about you, Emma. She told me about a gifted student who had a terrible accident. She's been looking for you for over a year. Emma felt her throat tighten. She had disappeared after the accident, too ashamed to face her old teacher, too broken to return to that world. She's worried about you, Robert continued gently. And I can see why. You're dancing on a street corner when you should be on a stage. I can't dance professionally anymore, Emma said, the words bitter and familiar. Not like this. Why not? Robert asked. I've spent 50 years in ballet, Emma. I've seen dancers overcome every obstacle you can imagine. I've choreographed pieces for dancers in wheelchairs, dancers who are blind, dancers with conditions you've never heard of. The art doesn't require perfection of body. It requires perfection of spirit. And from what I just witnessed, you have that. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card. I run a contemporary dance company now. Small, experimental, but we're doing interesting work. We're always looking for dancers who can bring something unique to the stage. If you're interested, call me. We'll arrange an audition. Emma took the card with trembling fingers. But I couldn't afford the training, We pay our dancers, Robert interrupted. Not a fortune, but enough to live on. And we provide healthcare. He smiled. Margaret would kill me if I didn't take care of her favorite student. Tears blurred Emma's vision. For 2 years, she had thought her dream was dead. She had accepted that this street corner was the only stage she would ever have. I don't know what to say, she whispered. Say you'll call, Robert replied. Say you'll give yourself another chance. After he left, Emma stood on her cardboard stage, holding the business card, watching the afternoon fade into evening. The street sounds continued around her, cars honking, people talking, the city breathing its endless rhythm. She thought of her mother, who had believed in her until the very end. She thought of Mrs. Chen, who had first taught her that ballet was more than steps, more than technique. It was the courage to express what words couldn't say. Emma looked down at her prosthetic leg, then at the card in her hand. She had learned to dance again once. She could do it again, on a different stage, in a different way. The sun dipped behind the buildings, casting long shadows across the street. Emma carefully packed up her speaker, picked up her cap with the day's earnings, and began the walk home. Tomorrow, she would make that call. Tomorrow, her new beginning would start. But tonight, as she walked through the streets of Los Angeles, Emma felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope.